Our guest today is Ginger Gadani. Ginger has 10 years of academic background in biochemistry. Her godson suffered from leukemia, and he asked her for materials that would help him understand what was going on within him. And Ginger gave it some thought, and shortly after that, Carr for Kids was born. Ginger is the CEO and concept developer of Carr for Kids. Ginger's nickname is Ginge, and she is also known as Big G Godmama, and she has so much to share. It's a privilege to welcome you, Ginger, to the show today.
Thank you. The one thing that I would like to share is that Mary and I are co-founders in a program of empowerment for parents and children. It's called Dr. Mary and Ginge, and it has to do with the healthy lifestyles, the dynamics, and also the fact that it shows and promotes the family lifestyle.
Yep, because
a healthy family lifestyle. We've assigned so many titles to us that we keep forgetting what hat we're wearing. So
regardless, welcome. And
thank you.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you here. First, I want you to share with us Tommy's story because it overlaps with your story.
Well, Tommy was a young man that lived behind my mom and dad at the farm, and he was just something else. He would come in, mom would be baking or something, and he was just one of those really exceptional children. And I found in through these experiences that a lot of these children with terminal diseases are just phenomenal. They're not only beautiful people, but they're insightful. It's an honor to be acquainted with them. And we used to teasingly he used to come in and say, "Ollie, what's my cookie today?" And we used to call him Tough Guy Tommy. Well, it turned out that Tommy was diagnosed with leukemia. And at that particular time, I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis. And Tommy and I really hit it off because we would compare white counts, and we became friends. And Tommy would, he would ask me questions like, why is my dad so angry at me? And I'd share with him he was angry at everything because he couldn't help the most precious thing that he had. And then I thought, both of us weren't really being listened to. We didn't really know what was being told to us. And even though I had, the background that I did academically, even though I was never able to really, practice it, most of it was in research because of the myasthenia and how debilitating it was. So Tommy, he would say, "Well, what does that mean? Or what is that?" And I had no experience whatsoever. I didn't even know I could draw a straight line. So I made him a book. And it was entitled Color Me Well. And it had information as to the properties of leukemia, what the cells did, how they interacted. And then I started putting personalities to them. Like there was Luke lymphocyte and, anyway, giving them a personality.
Yeah.
And then Tommy and I would discuss it. And I noticed in the same thing, I was, that the doctors they have their specialties and their knowledge and everything, but sometimes you think they miss the class on learning how to talk to people. So I figured, there should be a way, there should be some kind of material that you could feel familiarized or you could associate with. So before Tommy died at 8 years of age, he asked me if I would write a book like that for the other kids. So that's how it started. And in doing so, in having to go through all the challenges that I was going through with it was designated a terminal disease, Carr came about, Children at Risk Resources.
Right.
And looking back on it now, it was my line to surviving. And I beat some very outlandish odds because it was brain stemmed. And there was one time I was hooked up to life support and had a very, very serious surgery. And it took years to go into remission. But I was able to value my worth like Tommy was his worth in what he was battling. And it was a lifeline to both of us. Tommy was supposed to survive and I was supposed to die. And Tommy died, and I'm still here with fighting a terminal disease. So you don't know, but the thing of it is that it came out from the babes of the mouths of babes. And when I met a lot of Tommy's friends in the children's hospital that had terminal disease, the leukemia and other really devastating diseases, they had an aura about them. They had this grace about them, and this uncanny cut to the quick information. Just like when Tommy knew that he was dying, and he asked me, why are they doing all these things to keep me alive when I'm already dead? I mean, can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? And he had the insightfulness to know that,
Yes.
And then also, about nothing was explained to him. And I felt the same way. Everything was said over me, under me, through me, but not to me. And it was it was not only discouraging, but it was very, it was damaging, because when you feel that you're not being addressed individually, especially when it has to do with your very, very existence, whether people realize it or not, or take into consideration, it takes away from you. And when you're fighting a disease or you're fighting a chronic condition, you need every ounce of energy that you have. And I remember I wrote a poem, and at the end of it, when people say, I'm doing the best I can, with what I have. And I didn't realize, Mary, when I read the poem back, the last line said, I'm doing the very best I can with what I have, with what I was left.
Wow.
So, there were some very, very outrageously wonderful lessons. But like I said, sometimes you have to learn them the hard way to see their true value. So now I got very, very involved with Carr because to me, it's synonymous to Tommy's legacy.
And by helping, you helped yourself. You are helping yourself.
Oh, it's a lifeline.
It was a lifeline.
Yeah.
It was literally a lifeline.
It gave me purpose.
Exactly.
It gave me direction. It gave me value. Because the disease, myasthenia gravis is a grave muscle weakness. And when I smiled, I would snarl. I couldn't, my speech was slurred. There were times I couldn't even focus on a wall, and I couldn't even walk across a room. So Carr was my lifeline.
Yes. And you've done so
it's
much
interesting.
with Carr.
Yeah, because when you can't count on yourself, it does something to you, especially if you're, somewhat of an independent, crazy, wild little creature, like myself. It was devastating that I couldn't, I didn't have that independence. I couldn't rely on myself. And it was like I had this amazingly blessed, active mind that was encaged by its own body. And it's just amazing to this day to think that I not only survived it, but I flourished from it.
Absolutely. It's just amazing.
Yes.
Share with our audience the timeline. So, I mean, you were,
for 18 years I was in an immunological bubble. And it was so funny because when I came out of it, I had such naivety. I mean, I didn't know anything. It just dumb things like, I think I shared with you one time I flew to Arizona with my friend, and they had, the where you wash your hands, and it had the sign over it, place hands under faucet. Well, I took that literally. So I had one of those at the time, one of those quilted purses.
Yeah.
And I put it in the next a basin, okay, and then all of a sudden someone came to me and said, your purse is getting all wet. And I thought, well, why? It said put your hands, okay. So then I had to kind of wring my purse out, and we had to, and my friend says, hey, the shuttle is waiting for us to go to the hotel. So I run out of the bathroom, and we were running up the runway to get to where the hotel shuttles were. And at that time, there was this group of pilots and stewardesses coming off of this plane, like they have, an orientation, whatever.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend said, Ginger, she said, your purse is leaking. and I, without realizing it, I was totally embarrassed, but I don't know, I got this little quippy mind sometimes that, it just comes out with stuff. And I said, I told you I had to go to the bathroom. And it was just like all of a sudden time stopped, and all of these people that, had come off the plane, like single filed along the one side of the wall, the furthest that they could to get from us. So, but it was interesting in as much as that I had missed so much,
Yes.
I didn't know about points. I didn't know. First time that we left, we had what was it? The valet take the car. I thought he was stealing it. I ran after him down the ramp.
Oh no.
It wasn't that I was ignorant or anything like that. Well, yeah, I was ignorant to that, but I mean, it wasn't that I wasn't, I didn't have all my faculties, but it was just the idea that all this was so new. And so that's why I wrote the book, Are We Intrepid or Just Insane? To share those kinds of things that, it's not just what's been taken away from you physically, but how it affects you, the very value of the center of who you are.
Wow.
Or what makes you who you are. But and my friends, we had a really good group of friends. They would take me places, and they would put me in situations that they knew that I didn't have any knowledge of. But
Right.
no, it took me 18 years to get off. See, first of all, I decided not to do the chemotherapy or the immunosuppressive drugs or the steroids, or I opted for a very radical surgery. And because I didn't want to get into all those other substances.
Right.
So it took, I was put on a particular medication, and it took 18 years to go into remission.
My God.
But all the things that went with it, like I spoke to the father of prednisone at Mayo, and he was telling me about, the prednisone was going to make me well and whatever. And he got very upset when I said, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I know you're very knowledgeable in your area, but I really don't look good in a beard. He got very upset with me because he knew exactly what I was saying.
That's right.
He knew exactly. And then, I was able to interview Dr. Peter Daw, who was the so-called the inventor and father of plasmapheresis. And I had asked him a particular question, and he said to me, he said, well, he wanted to know exactly who I was. And I said, I was a myasthenia patient. He said, oh yes, I noticed certain things, on your the left side of your face, you kind of like go into a symptom. And I said, no, I said, that's just a family trait. We have a very annoying smirk when we So, but all of these things are like, and when doctors talk to you, they don't realize that you're hanging on every word.
It's true.
And even a simple, oh my God, it just drives you crazy. So that's why I wrote that book, Are We Intrepid or Just Insane? Because that is true, and a lot of us, unfortunately, don't have the self-value or self-worth that I was given as a child. I had a foundation on which to build my value and my self-esteem. And but a lot of people don't. And I remember
It's so true.
we were in a group. It was like a therapy group, and there's 18 of us, and we all had myasthenia. I had it the most involved and the worst, and should be the first one to go. I was the only one that survived it.
Wow.
I was the only one out of the group that survived it. And it was very interesting because I think a lot of it was just that being in that position was just not acceptable. And another part of it, the therapy and the way that we were being talked to and the parameters that they had just didn't apply. They just didn't, they weren't straightforward enough. They were based on clinical. They weren't based on personal or people. So all that came together, and then out of it came the Carr for Kids.
Wow. Well, and you are so right, Ginge. And I hope for our audience, our listeners, if you have a family member or friend who's struggling with a chronic illness, a chronic debilitating illness, you definitely want them to listen to Ginger's story, because the odds were so stacked against her.
Well, they still are, I mean, I wasn't supposed to survive. So I jokingly say I have a prolonged terminal disease that hasn't quite reached its fruition. So, but and then the other thing that I discovered, maybe it's not the best, but I do have a very ironic sense of humor. And that has just helped immeasurably. That, and I think a very devout adherence to denial. I don't like to be told what to do or what I'm supposed to do. And
let me ask you, when they gave you all these prognoses, what was going on within you?
Well, in the first place, it took me, I found out what it was myself. It took me 2.5 years, literally, to go around the world, to find out it was myasthenia gravis. I thought it was early onset muscular dystrophy, was just as terminal, all right? But then I saw a footnote, and then in when I was in Germany,
right,
I found a footnote in some of the research from the University of Heidelberg, whereby this disease, myasthenia gravis, is that after a certain period of rest, you could recuperate, even if it was minimal. And from there, I figured, hey, this is what I have. So then I had to come back to the States, and it took me 2.5 years, Mary, to find someone that would agree to the assessment. See, they thought for the longest time it was a neurological disease. It's not. Right. It's an autoimmune disease, which makes it entirely different.
Entirely different.
Entirely. And so I had come to the conclusion that I felt it was an autoimmune disease. It took me 2.5 years to find the neurologist and the surgeon that I wanted to do what I felt was correct for me. And to be honest with you, I don't know if it was defiance or what it was. I had this sense that this is what was correct for me, because I mean, I was quite challenged. I was very challenged in as much as that that they were suspecting my psychological makeup as to my insistence on what was correct for me. So, but I had that, I was given, I look back now, I was given so many gifts and so many assurances. And what really did it is one day when I was in the hospital just before the surgery, someone had left me a get well card. They didn't sign it, but all it says, don't worry, Ginge, God doesn't want heaven reorganized just yet. And so now when I'm asked, what do you think? I just say, well, no, I'm counting on that card. It's been, I think I'm one of two accredited and published cases that are now asymptomatic.
Wow.
No symptoms, no medication. But it's like with anything else, when you have something like that, when you have a malfunction, it's one thing, you can usually correct it. When you have a dysfunction, it's there and it's there for life, and anything goes. And there have been some very, very harrowing and very challenging and very threatening episodic situations, especially if there was an infection involved, that has really affected the immune system.
Right.
But it's interesting, and I feel that because of all those things, and because of the indignities and the mistakes that have been made
Yes.
via the medical professions process. But they also saved my life. I was lucky to find 2 or 3 doctors that really put their practice on the line. So I'm forever indebted to that. And that's one of the reasons why this is so important. And I think, in all honesty, that's one of the reasons that I'm still here, is to take all that knowledge and to be able to impart it. And then when my job is done, then I'll just have to go up and reorganize heaven.
And you still got a lot of work to do. And speaking of that, what are some of the projects that you're working on?
Well, like I mentioned at the very beginning, you and I are co-founders, and we have done not only the research that's been necessary, but also we found that we not only enjoy our banter and our information, but there's a very deep respect for each other. Because, like we discussed from the very beginning, the creativity is very delicate. It needs to be nurtured. And when you're dealing in academic issues, that usually just absolutely annihilates creativity. It really does. It not only dampers it, it just buries it.
True. It's so
true.
True.
And when we first met, I felt that you understood that, and it was something that you were open to. And that's when I asked you, would you like to have this project? So we came up with the idea of doing tutorials, and primarily the cornerstone was self-esteem. And so we did 2 sessions on self-esteem, and then in part of each one of the tutorials, we have an empowerment packet for the children. And in the self-esteem empowerment packet, we came up with a tool, because that's what Carr primarily is, tools to add to what is already established. And we came up with to write a play. We showed children how to write their own play. And the feedback, especially from the parents, when the child shared the play, because what we did also is we designed tickets that they could cut up and hand out to people, to attend their play. And some of the subject matter, the parents were they were
blown away.
They were not only astonished, they were embarrassed too, because there were some points that were brought out that they had no idea or how the child perceived it, or the fact that the child was hurt.
But by providing the tool, you provided that opportunity for the child to communicate, right? And express those innermost feelings. And then, as the parent understood, it helped be a healing experience.
And the communication. And that came from when I wrote Tommy the original book, Color Me Well. Tommy, he didn't know how to express his feelings.
Right.
And he wasn't given an opportunity. So in the middle of the book, I put a huge envelope, and it said feelings. And I told him, I says, now, you have control over those feelings. Life has control over you, but you have control over what you think. So if you have something that that you want to write down or you don't want to share right away, then put it in the envelope. And when Tommy died, I got the original book back, and on the envelope it had MY, and it was taped shut, and I have not opened that to this day, nor I will, because I gave Tommy my word that those would be his feelings, and that it would be held confidential.
Oh. And I can only imagine how healing that was for him.
Well, we got to be pretty good friends, and I he would say things that I know he didn't feel comfortable in saying to others. And I would feel comfortable, because the thing of it is, even though there was this large age difference, Tommy and I were facing the same things.
Yes.
The scrutiny, the dismissal, people taking on responsibilities that weren't theirs. This is my life. These are my decisions. I mean, thank you very much, but this is not your responsibility.
Yeah.
And you have no right to take making decisions based on your academic learning or your clinical learning. You still don't have any right to make my decisions. And that happens a lot, even nowadays, and especially now that, unfortunately, this is just my personal opinion, medicine is no longer a practice, it's a business.
It's sorry to say, and with it's cookie cutter protocols with no respect for the unique path of each person to heal, and which you did. You embarked on your own healing journey, and just by your own fortitude, you're like, no, I don't want to say it. But you said to yourself, I'm doing it my way.
Without knowing that I was doing it my way.
Exactly.
But it was I don't know if the word is hurtful, but it was how we get used to being a certain way, and I don't know if it's complacency or a little bit of arrogance. We expect certain responses, and and then we sit there, like our thumbs in our mouths, because like, wow, how come you don't feel the same way, But it's interesting, because I had some wonderful, and I have some wonderful doctors to where we're working in partnership. And that's why with Carr too, it's promoting working in partnerships, in reaching out, and not only giving value but receiving value, and learning not to expect anything from anybody. So that one's a little hard, because you say, okay, now I think I should have gotten a little bit more respect. Well, duh, no, don't think so. So
no, but like you said, Carr is fulfilling something deep within you that, like you said, it's been a lifeline and really provides meaning and purpose for you. And I know from collaborating with you how creative you are. And this gives you that platform that you can be all in, fully creative. And you are. You come up with amazing.
Well, I learned too that, we don't know how many minutes we have left, and I take it an increment of minutes, because there were times when I had to live my life minute to minute, especially when I was put on life support. But the thing of it is that, it's really important to just, even if it's not a good experience, cherish it. And live every second, every minute, and to really be kind, be kind to yourself, and be kind to others, not to be critical, of, well, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. The bottom line is that you're going to be doing what you're capable of doing. And until you learn differently, then that's
Right.
what you're going to have to keep on doing. And if you don't learn from it, you're going to have to learn it over again. But I don't know. Sometimes I marvel, if my story was somebody else's story, I would sit there and say, holy cow, is she an idiot? What is she doing? She's thinking that she's going to.
No,
No, I
no.
mean, seriously, the odds were so outlandish, and to think that I had even a slight chance was ignorant, Mary. I mean, it didn't show.
Wow.
No, I don't mean it in a down way. I mean it in a
No,
very,
no.
very positive way. You don't really know until you know.
That's right.
And I
That's
think the
right.
most important thing is to realize that, when you don't know something, you don't know it. Because, we can get ourselves into categories, and we're creatures of conditioning. We're all creatures of conditioning. It's very hard to change. And the only thing that's constant is change. And I think the biggest lesson that I learned, and because of my background, very Italian and very, very Swiss French, was that, the integrity and the tenacity,
Mhm.
and just being, oh my God, we had people in our family that, they didn't talk to each other for years, and they didn't even remember why they weren't talking, but they didn't talk. But you knew that, I mean, you had that kind of support that knew. It's just like, at the dinners, they had the adult table and they had the children's table. And and you worked your way up to get it to the adult table, but you knew you had these guidelines. And I think that was one of the things that came to light as I was fighting for my life, is that I had these guidelines, I had these assurances. Just like my grandfather used to say, well, we knew that he didn't do business well, but everybody knew that. So when you did business with him and you got snookered, then you don't have anybody that was responsible, because you made that choice.
Right.
But we were aware of that. But in today's society, and also when, the structure of the medicine world at the time, it was very formidable. And if you didn't have a sense of value, if you didn't have a sense of humor, I always say the two best tools to survive, one is courage, and the other is a sense of irony.
Yes, yes. Wow. And that's been your journey. And you are as energetic, sharp as can be. I see and hear everything you're doing. It is absolutely incredible. Incredible.
There are bad days too, Mary. I mean, there's always a payment extracted. It was like the second book I wrote, just doing my physic duty. And it had to do with, there really wasn't that much information on what happens after remission.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a whole different set of rules. And a lot of them are not kind.
Wow.
And they're very harsh.
Wow. So have you written on that?
Yeah, those two are on Amazon. And then the last one that I wrote was a children's book, and I'm going to continue it because it has to do with what we're doing.
Yes.
And it's called Dr. Ginger's Jungle Walk. And it has to do with accepting and discrimination. And what is its storyline where the plane crashes and they find themselves in the fourth dimension, and these animals are talking to Dr. Ginge and the crew, and how they had been ostracized in their own set of, and they were put into this fourth dimension.
Yes.
And so it's teaching, what you see isn't always what you get. Okay. And very basic things, but also the fact of how much we can learn from the differences of others, and how we have to put ourselves in that place to really see them as they are and appreciate them for what they have to give. And then it has to do with the medicine man and an amulet, so they can go back and forth. And then the second one that I'm working on right now is Dr. Ginge and the wilderness. And
Ah,
that has to do with, working as a community to come to a viable and valuable end. So,
wow.
but that comes all in with what you and I are doing now with the self-esteem, and now we're doing the bullying, and all of this is on our website, Carr for kids.com, and it has to do with like the self-esteem has 2 series, and the PDF download, and they're all very reasonable. The tutorials, the 30-minute tutorials that we have on cyberbullying and soon to be solutions, and one bullying overview is like $4.95, and the 12 to I think it's 10 to 12 page empowerment packet for the children is $2.50.
Yeah, so $2.50,
Yeah.
right? Less than a cup of coffee, and
far less than a Starbucks coffee.
$4.95. I mean, it's amazing to me. These tools are so reasonable. So as we're talking, and we'll leave the link to Carr for Kids below, we encourage all of our listeners to hop on the website. You will be amazed at how many valuable resources are there, and for pennies, and yet for parents, for children, they're incredibly valuable. So we encourage you to really have a look.
The other thing too is that, we always are open to contributions, because like, Mary, everyone has their specialities. So, we're having to learn a lot about marketing that we didn't know, and how that you can't do it all yourself, and you need to hire other services. And so, but the bottom line is that, what we did is that when we do the tutorial for the parents, it's all part of our parent-child empowerment series. So for every subject matter that we have for the parents, we have a corresponding empowerment packet for the child.
Yes.
Right now, we have the one on bullying, we have the one on self-esteem, we have the one on diabetes type 2. And the other reason that, like the diabetes one, is very, very prevalent. We also have our diabetes program. We donated it to about 4 countries in Africa, and it's been very, very successful. So we're trying to, I think the bottom line is that to get people to understand, help us, assist us to be able to help others help themselves. And that's the whole thing. If you can't see the value in yourself, then you're not going to have a very valuable life.
And I know from talking to some of the clinicians that we work with collaboratively in Africa, and they say that so many people do not understand. Like, let's use diabetes as an example. They have no idea, and it reminds me of Tommy. He's like, I don't understand. But your workbooks put it in a language and pictures that they understand.
Well, what we did is we looked at all the stuff some time ago. Dr. Albright, who is the head of the Diabetes Association, then she went on to, I think, be the leader of the National Health Organization. They put out a beautiful, graphically designed information article and book on diabetes type 2.
Okay.
And they found that it was not being accepted, it wasn't being understood, and it wasn't being utilized. And the reason that it wasn't is because this was something that just shocked their shoes off their feet. They found out that the mean reading age of the United States was 4.6th grade. And that's why it wasn't being utilized. So my childlike mind, which I cherish and encourage, said, well, that's silly. So what I did is that I gave our characters personalities.
Mhm. Mhm.
So there was Percy Pancreas, there was Latifah Liver, and I explained in simple and straightforward
Yes.
terms what they did. Very basic, like the symptoms, the 6 symptoms you were learning from Percy. I'm tired, I have to go to the bathroom a lot. But there was no real huge explanation. Okay.
Mhm.
Very simple, very, very straightforward.
Right.
Like the booklet's like 10 pages, and it goes from 8 to 80. We had elderly people saying, well, why didn't my doctor ever say this to me? And we found in doing it this way that we transcended ethnicity and we transcended age and education. And they got it.
Wow.
Like
And they got it.
And they got it. And we presented it. We wrote it. It's written in French and in Spanish.
Wow.
And they got it. There was nothing. It showed what insulin did by likening it to a car. Okay. And then the ones that we did, like for Africa, the foods that we mentioned and that kind of were foods that were indigenous to the area.
Well, and I know the nutritionist that we know jointly that, and she's been on this show, she from Kenya, and she would say, my patients, okay, so they go to the grocery store, and what greets them at the grocery store? What's right there before the cash register? All the sweets, all the chocolate, all the foods that are bad, and there's diabetes is rampant in.
Well, it's the third largest killer in all the world. And so
absolutely.
Right. So what we're trying to do is to establish ourselves behaviorally, like, the subject matter that we're doing. So then we can lead into the health. We got, oh my goodness, we got the diabetes type 2, we got the smoking Louis lungs, we've got we have about 14 different subject matters that we haven't published on, but we wanted to use the cornerstone as self-esteem. And then we wanted to get into bullying. And then this thing with the cyberbullying is just outrageously insidious. And also we try to show, like in our self-esteem, Mary, and you've been very good in from a clinical and professional point of view and pointing out how significant it is to be able just to take the time. It doesn't take that much time to build self-confidence in your child.
Exactly. But it's intentional, it's focused, and it's like with your words, with your tone. There's so many subtleties that go into a look, that go into developing a child's self-esteem. Like I remember in the self-esteem series that we did, we talked about if a parent is in the other room screaming at a family member, like just it goes on and on and on. All right, that impacts your child's self-esteem. There's a way, and we talk about this, there's a way to reel those feelings in and approach it from a more positive, more of a problem solving. Now there could be very legitimate reasons why you're frustrated. We get that. But it's how we approach it. And then how is it a win-win for you and a win-win for the other person? Like if you really don't like when they act a certain way, but you give them opportunities to improve themselves and encourage. But all that is good for kids too.
One of the things that, what we professed and what we tried to suggest strongly to all the parties involved, especially with the self-esteem, is before you say something, take a breath.
Right.
Take a breath. That 1 second, millisecond to take a breath is the difference between reacting and responding.
Exactly.
And it doesn't take, how long is a breath? Just focus on taking that breath.
That's right.
And being honest with the child, mom is very tired from work.
Right.
it's not that I don't want to talk to you or don't have time for you at this time, but I'll tell you what, after I get these things done, we will sit down and we will talk. And it doesn't have to be for very long. I mean, I know with my godchildren, it's so funny. I get things from the parents. Well, how come they want to come and visit you? You won't let them do the television or play the PlayStation or the games, and they want to go over. They want to go over to God, Mommy Ginger's, you know. And they said, and I said, because I asked them how their day is.
Yep,
And we're not distracted
that's right.
by all this electronic bombardment. Oh my God, especially now, and you know, with these things that are coming up and with AI coming into effect, it's just
Yes.
we're just being overwhelmed,
Mhm.
you know, inundated with information. It's just like my friend and I were talking about all the classes that we took and all the hours and the labs and everything, and we got to this point. We didn't use half of it, or we didn't use a third of it, and we didn't remember 2/3 of it. So, you know, it was just like, that's why I feel that practical application, common sense, but like Wadsworth said, common sense is not that common at all.
No, no. Well, before we close, I want to reach out to you and ask you if you have any final words for our listeners. We'll definitely have you back for other segments on the show, but for today, any final words?
I know this probably won't make too much sense, but follow your own flow. Listen to that voice inside of you.
Mm.
You may not even agree with it, but
Mhm.
but give it credence.
Mhm.
Follow your own flow. And that flow might be against, you know, it's just like when I made that decision not to go for the chemotherapy. I mean, I was overwhelmed with
Right.
the lectures and the statistical information and on and
Yes.
on. And like I said, I feel, and I can look back now, I've been extremely and am extremely blessed. My talents have been given to me. For the longest time, being an intelligent daughter in an Italian family wasn't exactly, you know, promoted.
Exactly.
But the bottom line was that I I had this sense. I may not had the confidence in myself,
Mhm.
you know, and that took some time, and I'm getting more and more each day. But I had confidence in what I did. Like if I did something, I knew I was going to do it well. I had that confidence. But as far as confidence in myself, that took a very, very long time.
Mhm. Mhm.
But follow your flow. It may go against a torrential river, but you have to hang on. And sometimes when something doesn't work out, you have to dig deeper. But the main thing is that if you listen, you know what affects you. You know on what level it affects you. You know when you don't know something. You know when you do know something. But to have that I guess it's just the word is pugnacity, to be able to know that within each of us there's something
Yes.
special and unique as to anyone
Yes.
else, and to hold on to that. Some of it takes us longer. My grandmother told me I was going to be a late bloomer, and I said, this is getting ridiculous. You know, I'm way past the point of that. But I think the most important thing is to count everything as a blessing. You know,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
it just maybe it's a hurtful situation, or maybe it's an overwhelming circumstance, whatever,
Mhm.
but embrace it, because it's a lesson. It's a lesson, and it adds to your value. It's like accruing interest on an account.
Wow. Words of wisdom, Ginge. So yeah, thank you so much for all this and sharing some depth of your story. I would encourage all our listeners to go to the website. We'll have the link below, Carr for the number 4 kids.com. And yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, you can go to Amazon and put in the titles of the books, and they'll come up, and they're also in Kindle, and they're very inexpensive also. So, but I want to reiterate, like I started this out, I am very, very thankful for the fruitful relationship that Mary and I have had, and we have fun. I mean, you can tell by the bantering, you can see the respect, but it just to take something academic and creative, and to be able to provide this very unique concept, and to show that, even though there are vast differences, there's always a connection. There really is. There's a likeness through everything.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so awesome. And you know what? All the depth of your wisdom, I mean, really, you pour yourself out into these materials, it really is enhancing the quality of life. I know the kids that have read and experienced your materials, they're
Well,
so much better off.
I'll share something that's very interesting. I'm very much an introvert. I'm very much of an introvert. And for me even to discuss, what we've discussed, or to share, I have some friends that I've known for, oh my God, years, and they know nothing of this.
Wow.
And so I'm very thankful that, Mary, that you see the value in literally pulling it out of me.
Well, and it's an awesome work in progress. So I can't wait for our listeners to stay tuned for the new.
Well, don't forget, everyone has a story. Okay, everyone has a story.
That's right. So as you're listening and reading and taking it in, think about your story. Think about the depth of your story and your journey.
So,
all right, Ginger, it's been a joy, and we'll have you back on the show soon. Ginger Gadani, Carr for Kids, and we'll have the links below.
Big G Godmama.
That's right. All right.
There's a whole new story. There's a whole story in that one too.
We'll do that one next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.